black site.
I shouldn't be alive to tell this. I shouldn't even remember it. But every time I close my eyes, I hear the alarms, smell the burning flesh, and see the thing that broke loose in that underground maze. They called it Site Echo 7, a black site, buried somewhere in the Nevada desert. I was a corporal in the Army, reassigned to Special Security Detail. Translation: babysitting scientists in white coats, working on something way above my clearance level. We were told nothing. We were armed with M4s, sidearms, and enough night vision gear to light up a war zone. But they said it was just precaution. Right. The desert was quiet out there. Too quiet. The stars above looked sharper than I'd ever seen, as if they were watching. The facility itself was hidden, just a patch of asphalt, chain-link fencing, and a concrete elevator that descended deep underground, like a missile silo with no missiles. My squad was 6 men, hardened, quiet professionals. We rotated shifts on perimeter watch, elevator security, and, the worst, sub-level guard duty. That's where they kept it.
Sub-level 3.
When I first stepped into sub-level 3, my skin crawled. The halls were reinforced steel, sterile, humming with generators. But the air felt wrong. Too cold, too still. Like the place itself was holding its breath. We weren't allowed past the containment bay. But even from the security post, we could hear it sometimes. Scraping, clicking. Once, a low hum, like a chorus of whispers blending into one alien sound. We joked about it. The Pet, some called it, or E.T. in chains. But no one ever laughed long. Even the scientists seemed rattled, pale and sleepless, and they never looked us in the eye.
The breach.
It happened on my 3rd week. I was in the monitoring booth, drinking stale coffee, when the alarms blared. A shrieking klaxon, red strobes flooding the corridor. Containment breach, sub-level 3, lockdown protocols engaged. The intercom spat static and screams. Actual human screams, then gunfire, then silence. Our sergeant barked orders. Move, lock down the bay. We ran, boots hammering steel, down to the massive blast door at the end of the hall. It was buckling outward, the metal warped as if something inside was pushing against it. And then, it opened. Not like a door, like a wound tearing open. The thing that crawled out wasn't a man or an animal. It was both and neither. Skin gray-green and slick, stretching too tight over elongated limbs. The head, the head was bulbous, veined, with eyes blacker than void, reflecting us in distorted miniature. Its mouth split wide, revealing rows of needle teeth slick with mucus. We opened fire, full auto. Bullets shredded its skin, but instead of blood, a black ichor sprayed, hissing as it hit the floor. The air filled with the stink of acid. One of my men, Torres, screamed as the droplets hit his face, burning straight through flesh to bone. The creature moved impossibly fast. It blurred, a smear of shadow, and suddenly Ramirez was lifted, torn in half mid-air, his legs dropping twitching onto the floor. I froze, training gone. My brain refused to process what my eyes saw.
The massacre.
We fell back, screaming, firing blindly down the corridor. The radios crackled with chaos from the other squads. Screams echoed from every level. Whatever else they were hiding down here, it was all loose now. We reached the elevator, tried to pile in, but the system had gone into lockdown. No access up. Trapped. The sergeant shouted to regroup in the armory on sub-level 2. We slammed the door shut behind us, sealing it with whatever we could find. Torres was moaning, his face a melted ruin. We tried to help, but his skin kept dissolving, sliding off in wet sheets. His screams gurgled until they didn't sound human anymore. And then he moved again. Too fast, too wrong. Torres wasn't Torres anymore. We shot him, again and again. The bullets only slowed him, tearing chunks off, but he still twitched, still dragged himself toward us, until his skull finally cracked apart like rotten fruit.
The descent.
Hours blurred, or maybe minutes. The thing in the containment bay wasn't alone. More of them. Different shapes, different sizes. Some like spindly insects with glistening carapaces. Some like eyeless shadows crawling across the ceiling. Some like pale, stretched corpses puppeted by invisible strings. Every corridor screamed with death. By the time we tried to fight our way to the surface elevator again, there were only 2 of us left, me and the sergeant. We reached the blast doors leading topside. Locked, of course. He looked at me, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Then he raised his rifle, pressed it under his chin, and whispered, "Better this way." The shot echoed. He dropped, and I was alone.
The escape.
I don't remember how I got out. There are flashes, running through smoke-filled corridors, bodies nailed to walls, their organs displayed like trophies. A scientist crawling, begging, before being dragged into a vent by something too fast to see. And then, the desert. I woke up under the stars, coughing black fluid, ears ringing. Somehow, I was outside the fence, lying in the sand. The facility was silent behind me. No alarms, no lights. Just that elevator shaft, standing there like nothing had happened. They found me 3 days later, dehydrated and raving. They told me the site didn't exist, that my squad never existed. But I know what I saw, what we fought, what we failed to contain. And at night, when I sleep, I dream of that sound, that humming chorus, calling me back underground, calling me home.
The lights over Ash Pine.
I used to love camping, the smell of wood smoke, the quiet nights away from everything, the laughter around the fire. Now, I can't stand it. I can't even drive past pine trees without feeling the air in my chest lock up because of what happened that summer at Ash Pine campgrounds.
The beginning.
It was supposed to be a weekend to celebrate the end of high school. Me, my best friend Carter, his girlfriend Jess, and a couple of other friends, Leah and Ryan, 5 of us. We had tents, beer we weren't technically old enough to have, and enough junk food to last us a week. Ash Pine was off the beaten path, deep in the Oregon woods. No cell signal, no traffic noise, just towering trees, the chirp of crickets, and the occasional hoot of an owl. When we first pulled up, the air felt fresh, crisp, perfect. Carter kept joking about Bigfoot, doing terrible impressions in the parking lot. We laughed. It was stupid, teenage fun. That night, after setting up camp, we sat around the fire, talking about college, jobs, the future. Jess leaned against Carter, and Leah kept sneaking looks at Ryan when she thought no one noticed. It was normal, comfortable. until the lights showed up.
The first night.
I remember it vividly. I was lying in my sleeping bag, half asleep, when I saw the glow outside the tent. White-blue, too bright to be moonlight, too sharp to be firelight. At first, I thought it was a ranger truck, but there was no engine noise, no footsteps, just this strange, humming silence. I unzipped the flap and peeked out, and there they were, 3 orbs of light, drifting above the tree line, perfectly still. Not drones, not helicopters. They didn't move like anything I'd ever seen. Then, in perfect unison, they shot upward and vanished. I zipped the tent shut and lay there, heart hammering, convincing myself I imagined it. I didn't wake the others. But in the morning, when we were eating burnt pancakes off a skillet, Leah asked, "Did anyone else see those lights?" One by one, the others admitted they had. That was the moment I knew something was wrong.
The sound.
The second night was worse. We were around the fire again, this time drinking hard, when we heard it, a sound coming from deep in the forest. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't anything natural. A low, thrumming hum, like metal vibrating, mixed with a strange clicking. It rose and fell in a rhythm, almost like speech. Ryan laughed nervously, tossing a beer can into the flames. Probably some weird generator or something. But no one believed it. Not really. Later, as we tried to sleep, it happened again, this time closer, louder. The ground seemed to buzz under me like the whole earth was resonating. Jess started crying in the tent. Carter whispered to calm her down. Leah kept asking, "What is that? What the hell is that?" And then, silence. Too complete. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Just dead, suffocating quiet.
The first disappearance.
At dawn, Ryan was gone. We tore through the campground looking for him. His tent was empty, sleeping bag unzipped, clothes still inside. No footprints leading away, no broken branches, nothing. It was like he'd been lifted straight out of existence. We searched for hours, screamed his name until our throats bled. Nothing answered. That night, none of us wanted to sleep. We sat huddled by the fire, clutching the hatchet and a flashlight like they'd actually protect us. And then the lights came back. Dozens of them, hovering in the trees, slowly circling, closing in. Jess screamed. Carter threw a bottle at one. The glass shattered midair, as if hitting something solid. But nothing was there. Leah collapsed, shaking, whispering, "Don't look at them, don't look at them." And then the humming started again. So loud I felt my teeth vibrating in my skull. We blacked out. All of us. Just gone.
The abduction.
I woke on a cold metal table. The air was sterile, sharp, like bleach. Bright white light poured down from nowhere, searing my eyes. My arms and legs wouldn't move. Restraints of some kind held me in place. Shapes moved around me. Tall, impossibly thin, skin gray and smooth like wet clay. Heads too large. Eyes like black oceans, reflecting the light. They never spoke. Not with mouths. But I felt them in my head, brushing through my thoughts like someone rifling through a filing cabinet. My nose bled instantly. My ears rang. One of them leaned close, its face inches from mine. I wanted to scream, but my jaw locked tight. It raised an instrument, a long, slender needle glistening with some oily fluid, and pushed it into my thigh. Pain. Blinding. All-consuming. Like my nerves were being set on fire. I thrashed, but the restraints didn't budge. The needle slid deeper. Then another punctured my chest. I smelled my own skin burning. Beside me, I saw Carter on another table, eyes wide in terror. He tried to speak, but the thing hovering over him sliced his abdomen open with something too sharp to comprehend. No blood spilled. Instead, glowing strands of light, like veins of electricity, writhed out of him, and the creatures plucked at them like threads. Jess's screams echoed down the corridor. Leah's sobbing turned into guttural choking. And then I blacked out again.
The aftermath.
I woke up back at the campsite, alone. The tents were shredded, the fire pit overturned, everything scattered. Carter, Jess, Leah, gone. Only my sleeping bag remained, soaked in blood that wasn't mine. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. I stumbled barefoot through the trees until I found the ranger station. A kindly old man was inside. He looked at me, pale and shivering, and just nodded like he already knew. "Another one," he muttered. "What?" I croaked. He didn't answer, just poured me a cup of water and muttered prayers under his breath. The police came later. They searched the grounds. Found nothing. No evidence, no bodies. Just me, babbling about lights in the sky and creatures in the dark.
Now,
That was 2 years ago. They never found my friends, not a trace. Their families stopped calling me after a while, convinced I'd had something to do with it. But I know the truth. At night, when I'm alone, I hear the hum again, faint at first, then louder. Sometimes the lights flicker outside my window. I don't sleep much anymore. I don't camp. I don't live. I just wait. Because they're not done with me, not yet.
harvest at Hollow Creek.
I used to think small towns were safe. That places like Hollow Creek, population maybe 300 on a good day, were immune to the horrors you only read about in the news. But I was wrong. And the proof is that Hollow Creek isn't on any maps anymore. It's just gone. And I was there when it happened.
The arrival.
I was 19 when my uncle asked me to house sit. He lived in Hollow Creek in a farmhouse on the outskirts. He was flying to Arizona for 2 weeks, and he wanted someone to keep an eye on the property, feed the chickens, and watch the dogs. It sounded easy. Free food, peace, and quiet. No parents breathing down my neck. I loaded up my old Toyota with bags, drove 3 hours out of the city, and pulled into town just before dusk. The first thing I noticed was how empty it felt. Hollow Creek had one diner, a grocery, and a gas station, all clustered around a single stoplight. Normally I'd see people, farmers, kids on bikes, old folks sitting outside, but the streets were bare. The air felt heavier, like a storm was coming. When I reached the farmhouse, I saw the dogs weren't barking, just sitting there watching the tree line. Their eyes followed me like they were waiting for something. I laughed it off, told myself small towns had their quirks. But that unease in my chest didn't leave.
The first night.
That night, I sat on the porch with a beer. The horizon glowed orange from the sunset, the fields stretching out in waves. It was quiet. Too quiet. No cicadas, no crickets, no frogs in the pond. Just a faint, low hum that I thought was power lines at first. It was steady, mechanical, unnatural. The dogs whined, pacing in circles, ears pinned back. Then all at once they bolted into the barn, tails tucked between their legs. I went inside soon after, locking the doors. At 2:13 a.m., the power cut out. The house went black. I thought a breaker blew, but then I saw the glow. Out the window, over the cornfields, something hovered. A light, white-blue, brighter than the moon, pulsing in waves. It was silent now, no hum, no noise at all. And then the corn bent. Not from wind, but from something moving through it. Something big. I hid under the blanket like a child, whispering to myself until exhaustion finally dragged me into sleep.
Day 2. The missing people.
In the morning, the power was back. Everything looked normal. But when I drove into town for groceries, Hollow Creek was wrong. The diner was open, but empty. Plates of half-eaten food sat on the tables. Coffee still steamed in mugs. Chairs pushed back like people had gotten up in a hurry. The grocery store was the same. Carts in the aisles, registers abandoned. The gas station too. Cars left at the pumps, doors hanging open. Everyone was gone. I drove street to street, shouting names, knocking on doors. No one answered, except at the elementary school. The gymnasium door was wide open. Inside, I found the bleachers stained with something dark. Rows of shoes, neatly lined up, like people had taken them off in unison. And scrawled across the chalkboard in frantic, jagged letters was one word: harvest.
The night of the lights.
That night, I stayed locked inside the farmhouse with every curtain drawn. At exactly midnight, the humming returned. This time stronger. My chest vibrated with it. The dogs howled in the barn until they suddenly went silent. I peeked through the window. The sky was alive with lights. Not one, not two, but dozens moving in patterns, circling over the fields like predators scenting prey. They shifted color, blue to white to crimson, in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. And then came the figures. They weren't gray like in movies. These were taller, stretched thin, their bodies almost translucent, veins glowing faintly under their skin, their heads too narrow, their mouths lipless slits. They moved through the corn like water, smooth and silent. One by one, they approached the houses. And from within those houses, people were dragged. Not resisting, not screaming. Walking in slow, unnatural steps, eyes vacant. I saw Mr. Harlow, the old man from the farm down the road. He shuffled barefoot through the dirt, arms limp at his sides. Behind him came his wife and his son, all moving like puppets. The lights above pulsed, and the figures guided them into the corn. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't.
The barn.
I thought maybe the barn was safer. At least it didn't have windows. I grabbed a flashlight and ran for it, heart hammering. The dogs were inside, but they weren't moving. They sat perfectly still, eyes glassy, like they were drugged. When I touched one, its skin was cold. Too cold. Then the flashlight flickered, and I realized the barn wasn't empty. In the corner, stacked like firewood, were people. Dozens of them. Naked, pale, their skin covered in strange, black geometric markings that pulsed with faint light. Their chests rose and fell, but their eyes were shut, their mouths slightly open. A low hum filled the barn, vibrating the wood. and above them, suspended in the rafters, hung something massive. Not a machine, not alive, something in between. Flesh fused with metal, tubes sliding into bodies below, draining something glowing from their veins. The light inside it pulsed in time with the lights outside. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the hum pressed down on me until my knees buckled and my head filled with static. The last thing I remember before blacking out was one of the tall figures bending toward me, its black eyes swallowing my reflection.
The harvest.
When I woke, I was no longer in the barn. I was strapped to a table inside something vast. The walls weren't walls, more like endless tissue that pulsed and shifted. Lights embedded in the skin glowed like veins. Rows of humans stretched into the distance, each restrained, tubes burrowed into their stomachs and throats. Some were still alive, eyes darting, twitching. Others were bloated, drained husks. And then I saw them. The harvesters, not the thin ones. Bigger ones. 15 feet tall, with elongated limbs ending in bladed digits. Their faces were split vertically, opening and closing like a grotesque flower, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. They walked the aisles, inspecting the humans, slicing open torsos, pulling organs with mechanical precision. Blood didn't spill normally. It floated upward, drawn into vents in the ceiling, shimmering like liquid stars. One stopped at my table. Its split face opened and a sound poured out. Not a scream, not a word, but something inside my skull. Images burned in my mind. Planets stripped bare, oceans boiled away, civilizations herded like cattle. We weren't the first, we weren't special, we were just the next. It raised its blade hand above me. I screamed. And then, nothing.
After
I woke in a hospital 2 weeks later. The police found me wandering the interstate, barefoot, covered in strange burns. They said I'd been delirious, speaking nonsense. When they went to Hollow Creek, the town was gone. Literally gone. No houses, no diner, no school. Just empty fields. Like nothing had ever been there. The doctors said trauma made me hallucinate. That Hollow Creek never existed. That maybe I'd wandered too long in the woods. But sometimes, at night when I lie awake, I hear the hum. And I know the harvest isn't over. It's only begun.
the silence beneath Black Rock Base.
I was stationed at Black Rock Base in Nevada, an underground facility carved into the desert limestone 10 levels deep. Officially, we were communications specialists. Unofficially, even we weren't sure what the hell this place was. I wasn't fresh out of boot. I'd done a tour overseas before getting reassigned here. They said it was a cushy post. Clean halls, air conditioning, 3 square meals a day. No one shot at you. No landmines under your boots, but I'd take a firefight in the sand over what I saw at Black Rock any day.
The silence.
It started on a Tuesday. I was on rotation in the control room monitoring radar feeds and long-range comms. Usually it was dead quiet except for civilian airline chatter, but that night every channel went dark, not just static. Silence, like the frequencies themselves had been cut out of existence. I thought it was a malfunction, but then every console in the room flickered. Screens filled with distorted shapes like bone-white figures moving across the static. Then they vanished. Probably interference, Sergeant Keller muttered, lighting another cigarette, but his hand was shaking.
The descent.
By morning, the elevators stopped working. No one could get above level 3.
Captain Davis sent a team up the emergency stairwell. They never came back. A private named Harrow swore he heard them over the intercoms. Not their voices exactly, just screams, cut short by wet crunches. The captain locked down the stairwell after that. We were trapped.
The first victim.
On day 2, Private Connolly disappeared from the barracks. We searched every hallway, every supply room, nothing. Until Corporal Jenkins found a trail in the maintenance tunnel. A thin smear of blood leading into the ventilation shaft. When we pried it open, we found what was left of Connolly, not a body, just his skin. Peeled away, draped neatly over the metal like a discarded uniform. His eyes still in place, staring, empty. Inside the skin was nothing, no bones, no organs, just gone. Someone puked, someone else fainted. Captain Davis ordered us to stay armed in pairs at all times.
The hums.
That night it started. A low hum vibrated through the walls, steady and pulsing. It wasn't the generators, kurdum, we knew those sounds. This was different, organic. The hum pressed into our skulls, rattled our teeth. Some of the guys swore they could hear whispers in it. By the second hour, 3 soldiers started convulsing. Their eyes rolled white, veins bulging black beneath their skin. One of them screamed until his throat split open. The others just collapsed, twitching until they lay still. And then, they got up, not themselves anymore. Their jaws hung slack, arms limp, but their bodies moved with jerks and snaps, bones cracking like dry twigs. Their eyes leaked a faint blue light. We opened fire. It took everything we had to put them down. When the bullets tore through, the bodies didn't bleed normally. Something shimmered inside like silver fluid. And when it touched the floor, the concrete hissed like acid.
The Black Rock.
By day 3, we stopped pretending this was a malfunction or a containment drill. Whatever Black Rock Base was built for, it wasn't communications. This place was a prison. And something had broken out. We found a restricted access shaft on level 10, sealed behind blast doors we weren't supposed to open. The security logs were wiped, but Davis overrode it. Inside was wrong. The walls weren't steel, they were stone, black and porous, covered in carvings that glowed faintly when our flashlights hit them. The temperature dropped 20 degrees the second we stepped inside. At the far end of the chamber was an object, a monolith, smooth and obsidian, humming in that same rhythm we'd been hearing all night. Only now it was louder. When Keller touched it, he screamed. His hand melted into the stone, skin bubbling like wax. And then he was pulled in, bones snapping as he disappeared into the black surface like it was liquid. The hum grew louder after that.
The feeding.
One by one, soldiers began to vanish, sometimes in pairs, sometimes whole fire teams. We'd hear footsteps echoing in the halls. Not boots, but something lighter, faster. Shadows slid just beyond flashlight beams, too tall, too thin. We set up barricades in the mess hall. That's when we realized we weren't alone. Harrow was on watch when he saw them. Not human, not anymore. Soldiers we'd lost, their skin stretched too tight, their mouths fused shut, their eyes glowing with that same faint blue. They moved in twitching spasms, heads cocking at unnatural angles. Behind them came the tall ones. Not soldiers, not human at all. Their limbs were too long, their torsos twisted like stretched clay. Their heads were featureless except for slits that opened and closed like gills, leaking mist. And they watched us, not attacking, not speaking, just watching. Until the hum came again. And then they moved.
The Last Stand.
Gunfire in concrete halls is deafening. Muzzle flashes lit the dark as we poured everything we had into the advancing shapes. Some went down, most didn't. One of the tall ones grabbed Corporal Jenkins by the skull. His head caved in like wet plaster, his body twitching as something silver slid out of the alien's palm and into his spine. Jenkins stood up a moment later, with no head, still walking. Davis screamed for us to fall back, but there was nowhere left. I ran, tearing through the hallways deeper and deeper until I reached level 10 again. The monolith was pulsing now, cracks running across its surface. Something inside was pushing to get out. The walls dripped black fluid, veins spread across the floor. The air reeked of ozone and rot. And then I saw them. Every missing soldier, every missing civilian who'd ever been brought here. Strapped to the walls, their bodies fused into the stone, mouths open in silent screams. They weren't dead, they were part of it.
The silence.
I don't remember escaping. One moment I was staring into the black surface as shapes moved inside it, pressing against the cracks like unborn things trying to claw their way free. The next, I was in the desert. Alone, the base was gone. No entrance, no hatch, just sand and wind. They said there is no Black Rock base, that I must have deserted, that maybe I went crazy in the heat. But sometimes at night when everything goes quiet, I hear the hum. And in the silence, I know they're still beneath us, waiting.
The vanishing sky.
I grew up in a small town in Montana called Elk Haven. You've probably never heard of it. Not many have. Population barely touched 900. One gas station, a diner, a school that doubled as a storm shelter, and long rolling stretches of farmland where the sky always seemed bigger than it had any right to be. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked. Until the night the sky went missing.
The first disappearance.
It was late September when the first kid vanished, a high school sophomore, Jeremy Holt. He was last seen walking home from football practice. His parents said he never came through the door. Cops combed the town, searched the woods, even drained a section of the river. No trace. Then another went missing, then another. By the time the third child disappeared, fear settled into Elk Haven like a sickness.
The sky.
I was 19 then, still living with my folks, working nights at the gas station on Route 47. One evening, just past midnight, I stepped outside to smoke. The crickets were loud, the wind gentle across the fields. But when I looked up, my cigarette fell from my hand. The stars were gone, not covered by clouds. Gone. The sky was a blank, lightless sheet stretching forever, blacker than pitch. The moon, the constellations, the Milky Way, everything had vanished. And in that empty dark, shapes were moving, not planes, not meteors, shapes that glided too smoothly, too silently. I heard a low, vibrating hum that rattled through my chest, and the gas station windows trembled. That's when the power cut out.
The lights.
For the next 2 nights, the entire town lost power every evening after midnight. When it happened, strange lights flickered across the cornfields, tall vertical shafts of white that moved slowly, scanning, sweeping side to side like search beams. Anyone who followed them didn't come back. Sheriff Dalton sent a deputy to investigate. The man's patrol car was found the next morning, doors open, radio still crackling. The seatbelts were fastened, but the deputy himself was gone. and on the hood of the car, burned into the paint, was a perfect circle the size of a dinner plate. The metal inside the circle had been melted, warped into glass.
The sound.
By the end of the week, people stopped going outside at night. Didn't matter, because the sound started coming inside. Every night, right around 12:30, a low thrumming filled the houses, pressing through walls and into skulls. It made your vision blur, your teeth ache. Pets clawed to be let out, foaming at the mouth. Babies screamed until they passed out. Then the nosebleeds started. Half the town waking up with blood running down their faces, staining their pillows. Some said they were dreaming things, too. Tall, skeletal figures standing at the edges of their beds, watching, waiting.
The taking.
On the 9th night, the town went silent. Every phone, every radio, every television. Nothing but dead static. That's when the lights came down from the sky. Not beams anymore. Orbs, dozens of them glowing white, each the size of a truck tire. They drifted silently through the streets, bobbing in the air, pausing at houses as if listening. I watched one hover outside my bedroom window. The glass frosted over, my breath caught in my throat. And then it moved on. Others weren't so lucky. I saw people lifted into the air, screaming, clawing at nothing as they were pulled upward into the void where the sky should have been. The orbs swallowed them whole, skin peeling back from their faces in strips, leaving bone gleaming white under the light before they vanished completely. The sound that came after still haunts me, like wet meat grinding through a machine.
The field.
By dawn, half the town was gone. Those of us who remained gathered in the diner, desperate for answers. Sheriff Dalton tried to rally us, but his voice was cracking. We decided to search the fields. It was a mistake. We found them at the edge of Miller's cornfield, rows of townsfolk. The missing kids, the deputy, neighbors we'd known our whole lives. They were standing perfectly still, eyes wide open, mouths slack, staring skyward. Every single one of them had a hole drilled into the center of their forehead, not bleeding, not raw, perfect circles, smooth, as if carved by a machine. When we tried to move them, their skin split like paper, revealing nothing inside, just hollow shells. One toppled over, breaking apart into dry husks. That's when we realized these weren't people anymore. They were replacements.
The vanishing.
The following night, the rest of the town was taken. I don't know why I was spared. Maybe luck, maybe punishment. I hid in the storm shelter, clutching my father's old hunting rifle. I heard the hum rise to a deafening pitch, heard the walls shake, heard the screams above. And then, silence. When I came out, Elkhaven was empty. Cars sat abandoned in the streets. Doors swung open on their hinges. Meals rotted on tables. But not a single soul remained. Even the animals were gone. And when I looked up, the sky was still empty. No stars, no moon. Just blackness. I've driven for days since then, crossing state lines, searching for someone, anyone. But the roads are barren. The towns are silent. And every night, just after midnight, the hum begins again.
The end.
I don't think this is just Elkhaven. I think this is everywhere. The stars are gone, the sky has vanished, and soon so will I.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Eerie Archives channel. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see in the next video. Until next time, stay eerie.